everybody, it's me, Man Alone. Welcome to the Man Alone YouTube channel. Today, like every day, we're going to be talking about SoloRPGs. A little bit more of an abstract conversation today. I know some of you like that, and some of you, good luck on the rest of your YouTube journey today. So we have two goals in this video today. The second is to prognosticate, to forecast what lies ahead in the world of solo role-playing. What will be the innovations, the changes to the format, the new things, the new discoveries that are really going to change the game. And for this specifically, I'm thinking about things that are going to be the same sort of leap forward that like the iPhone was after, steadily upgrading Nokia phones over time. And then you sort of leap forward to the iPhone. No matter what you think of the iPhone, that was a definitive moment in which the past and future were cleaved, and there was clearly a new game happening then. And I think that we are ripe for an iPhone leap for solo gaming. I don't think that solo role-playing is by any means stagnant. I think that there's lots of new technologies being implemented, and I mean that not in like the sense of electronic technologies. I mean that in new strategies, new formats, new mechanics, stuff like that. I think we are refining a lot of things. I think finding new ways of using different things. But again, I'm trying to let my mind go wild here and think, what could happen in the future, right? Like what's the next phase? And so to do that, the first part of the video, I want to talk about what is a solo RPG? What are the pieces of it? How do you reverse engineer it, right? Like if solo RPG play were a mechanism, what are the parts of it? Could we remove this dial, and could we turn this gear, and can we put a little exhaust right here? And I think if we reverse engineer that, we'll have a better way to predict what is going to happen next, because we'll see the pieces and how they can be either upgraded or changed or used in a completely different way. And to do that, I think the best place to start will be totally random place to start, which will be randomization. Randomization, probably not what you were expecting to be talking about today. Totally random. Randomization I think, plays a central role in solo play. And as elementary of a concept as it is, I think that we should investigate that, look under the hood of it a little bit to see what exactly we are trying to do with randomization, what role does it play, and how it might be involved in moving the art form forward here. To demonstrate that, I suppose, I wanted to start with a new segment that I want to add to my videos. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you probably know that I also have a podcast, a weekly podcast for $4 a month, $1 a week. You can enjoy an additional hour-long podcast, give or take. The Man Alone Super Secret Podcast is available on buymeacoffee.com/manalone. I now have almost 80 subscribers. I can't believe it. We're having a hell of a time over there. The latest episode was hilarious. One of my co-hosts, Mr. 55, played through 12 years by Max Moon Games, and we did I guess you'd call it a post-mortem on his game, and the commentary. I was literally lolling. It was so fun. So if you feel so compelled, please join us over there. Also, for $1 a month, you can become a YouTube channel member, get a brand new set of emojis, see some members-only posts and polls, and most importantly, you get a waffle badge when you comment on this channel, which is I'm proud to say that some early adopters are so far along now that their badge has evolved and it's become purple. I know that there are 7 different levels, and the first level you get to is after a month of membership. And it's so nice to see that, and I can't wait for you to continue this evolutionary waffle journey, but you definitely don't want to be left behind. So if you haven't done that already, please, if you like what you hear, go ahead and sign up. The reason I just spent about a minute shilling there is to introduce the new segment I'd like to do at least once a week, which is what I like to call the Rod Corner. So the Rod Stewart Corner is going to be a way for me to give a special shout out to one randomly chosen member. Now, I created a very simple application using my programming skills that I learned in 1994, programming a TI-83 calculator. And so my skills suck, but I think they were good enough to do what I try to do here, which is I created a thing that will randomly spit out either a member or subscriber's names, and the chances you have of your name being drawn are equivalent here to how many dollars you spend a month. So if you're just a channel member, that's $1, you get 1 entry. If you're a subscriber to the pod, you get an additional 4. If you do both, you get 5. And it will spit out your name. And then we'll give you, your weekly prize, which will, we're not here in person, and I wish we were. We could do an Oprah's favorite things kind of thing. But we'll use whatever solo materials we have that week to give you another form of a gift, which is a sort of your weekly horoscope, your weekly prophecy or something like that. So actually, let me get my dice really quick. Okay, and so without further ado, Rod and I would like to congratulate the first ever Rod Stewart Appreciation Corner. Thank you. Yes, Patrick R. Patrick R., thank you so much for being a subscriber. I really appreciate having you there. Rod appreciates you, and you are this channel's greatest hits. We don't want to send you home empty-handed, so we're going to use our Solo Investigator's Handbook to give you a little bit of an insight of what you're going to be seeing this week as you go forward. And we're just going to peek through the veil here really quick. All right, so this is actually really exciting, Patrick. So I just want you to know that the now I don't peer through the veil, but I have friends that do. Let's get this out of the way here. Patrick, this week I think it's important you know that a remote site or town has been devastated by a mysterious phenomenon, and you've been asked to travel there and investigate. This is really, really exciting. Now, I didn't just make this up. I actually heard this from well, to be honest, Patrick, you've done something bad and somebody knows. And so you're being blackmailed to do this. And so if you don't do it, they're going to release this information. I can't imagine what they know about you because I know you're such a stand-up guy. So you really, you're going to have to, you're going to have to leave. I know you feel comfortable where you are in your shop that you own, but you're going to meet somebody. And this person, they're an artist. You'll recognize them right away. Because they just have these very distinct qualities, and they're going to help you out. So they're very aggressive, physically aggressive, but also mentally aggressive. So they're really going to figure out what's going on at this remote site, and they're dependable. I mean, and I think that's important. If somebody is aggressive and not dependable, that's just a bull in a china shop, right? That just means there's going to be trouble. But more than anything, they're industrious and dare I say, courageous. And they're going to help you out. They're going to give you the support that you need in order to excuse me, I have something in my throat. Let's see, some tracks that are leading away from this area. So, let's recap. So we have this remote site. You're being blackmailed into investigating it. You're going to have this very industrious, aggressive, and intelligent artist helping you out. And the first step, whoever is blackmailing you, I don't know who it is. It's not me, for the record. They're just insisting that you sort of, there's some tracks outside of town, and apparently they want you to kick those tracks, get rid of them. I'm sure that they're not related to a crime or anything. You won't be implicated for obstruction of justice. Patrick, the bottom line is you are going to have a very exciting week ahead of you. I'm jealous. I wish I were you. Good luck with all that, and can't wait to see who is going to be the winner of the Rod Stewart Appreciation Corner next week. Okay, 10 minutes in. Now that we've separated the wheat from the chaff, congratulations if you're still watching. I'm sure I've lost about 90% of the viewers at this point, but that's okay because this means it's premium hour and we can make fun of everyone who left. What a bunch of dullards. Wonder what they're looking at. I bet they're looking at a Mr. Beast burger video or something. Not us. We have really cool things to talk about, such as the mathematical concept of randomization. Okay, why am I starting here? I'm starting here because I think that it is important to consider the lengths that we go through as solo players to randomize things, to randomize outcomes, details, moments, encounters, stats, to randomize this police siren that's going off. 1 second. Okay, it's not really going away. I think this ambulance is just driving in a circle, but I guess it's bearable now. Look, I played, one of my friends, their kids just learned how to play tic-tac-toe. And so I did a tic-tac-toe board the other day. Now this isn't it. This is just a replica of it. But every time I play tic-tac-toe now as an adult, I get filled with what can only be described as a sort of ennui, an existential dread, because when you're about 3 tick or tacks in, you pretty much know if you're going to win, lose, or draw, right? You're like, oh man, this, the staggering, heartbreaking predictability of it all. When we're 3 years old, this is like anything can happen, right? But as we get older, 9 slots of randomness is not going to be enough to sate our desire for encountering that which is surprising, unknown. Let's do the beginning of every wedding, great wedding speech. Webster's dictionary defines commitment as, I don't actually know what Webster's dictionary defines randomness as, but I assume it's something like this. Randomness is a result that cannot be anticipated and from which a pattern cannot be inferred, right? And so I guess theoretically, from what I remember from a course called Philosophy of Numbers that I took 14 years ago, there is some contention around whether or not true randomness can possibly exist in nature. One group would say, well, things that we call random are just things that are sufficiently complex such that figuring out their initial conditions that yield their outcome is either not possible using human means or technology, or is just not a good use of time, right? So if I saw a little tiny cricket jump from that dice tray right there onto the mouse, I could probably figure out, if I dedicated my whole rest of my life to like measuring the angle of incidence on their jump, studying the cricket's biology, figuring out what time it was and what sort of like hormones they were going through, I could do all that, but it's a waste of freaking time, right? I don't want to do that. And so my brain just sort of files it away and says random. On the other hand, there's some that would say, no, there are some like non-repeating patterns, ripples on a pond, or like the one that would get brought up a lot was the radioactive decay of an atom. We don't know when it will happen or how long it will take, etc. But it really doesn't, at that point, it doesn't matter. I think of it, what we're looking for as adults, and in fact, what we're looking for as solo role players, is a level of complexity such that our brain is able to tentatively say, yes, that was random, right? And so in order to create that, whether that's in solo play or tabletop play, we use generally 3 things. We use an oracle, some sort of randomizer, and a mind, okay? Now, when we're playing in a group, we get the added bonus of filtering the final result through the hidden or undisclosed contents of the GM's mind. And we are satisfied that the GM is creating these things based on random electrical chemical patterns in their brain, and that they are being held accountable as well through the odds of the dice, and that they're referring to some sort of source material from which they draw the basic constraints of what they're allowed to say. Okay. So if we look at solo RPGs that way, we could say that the oh my gosh, this I don't know if you're able to hear this, but this ambulance is going again. pretty selfish to be like, why does it have to be going now? But let me pause one more time. Okay. Has anyone noticed that ambulance sirens sound more despondent lately? Like they're like, what's the point? Okay, anyway, so if we look at solo games in that way, we have what I've broken down into like a couple phases, maybe components, maybe phases. So let's say that an author is sitting down to create a solo game, like to write a book. The first thing they got to do is create the world, as much or as little as they want, right? I mean, some solo games are in a definitive reality with definitive boundaries, definitive characters or dramatis personae, definitive places. Other solo games are pretty loose in that they say, here's the genre or here's the general location. I mean, Starforge is like, the game takes place in this area of the galaxy. But you even decide things in that game, such as if there's like magic or not, or psychics or not, you know, if there's going to be some, you know, like what sort of government is on every planet. Whereas you take another game like Broken Cask Society, and there's a pretty definitive thing going on there, right? You're traveling to a tavern, there's different food on offer, there's different quests, etc. So they're going to create that. They're going to draw like the outline, the blueprint, and they're going to infuse it with character, literally characters, or just like a flavor of it. Maybe a history, maybe a backstory, maybe, I don't know, something like a timeline or something like that. And of course, mechanics. Generally, what are the randomizing means by which we will resolve ambiguity or conflict or undecidedness, okay? And then once there is all that mechanics, there will be some way to activate it, right? To sort of pull the cord and say, okay, now you're going to embark on this gameplay cycle, and you're going to follow this path, this flow chart, whether that is like overtly drawn as a flow chart with arrows, or if just through the text you can infer what the flow or the gameplay cycle is. And then eventually you are going to encounter something that requires randomization. And that randomization could be in the generation of that thing, right? Like in Solo Investigator's Handbook, we randomly generated an NPC, or there'll be some sort of NPC and enemy, and then you have to randomize the result of your interaction with them, whether that be a conversation or combat or a purchase or something like that. We use this randomization to shake up, literally shake, you know, when we shake the dice, we're shaking up the different variables involved. There's a higher level of that I talked about on my last video, where you then start taking disparate notions and you combine them, right? And so you are going to roll on one table and it's going to say coffin, and then on the next table it's going to say cake. And you're like, oh, a coffin cake. What could that mean? And you can literally be like, oh, it's a cake in the shape of a coffin. But you can also combine the notions of them to say, so like maybe this is a scene in which someone, so you meet somebody who was born on the exact day that somebody else of note died, right? Or you think about somebody, like maybe if it's a fantasy game, like somebody has to die in order for this new king or princess or whatever to be born, who is the hero of that, right? And as we go a bit further, as we get a little bit more, let's say, less literal, more abstract, and I'm actually missing the damn card for this, we're moving beyond synthesis into what could be called alchemization, right? We're starting to alchemize a higher meaning. We're alchemizing the inputs that we get. We're not just combining them. We are converting them. We're sublimating them. We're making them into something transcendent. And so rather than literally taking a coffin and a cake, we allow the notion that comes up in our mind, whether or not that's tethered to the actual thing or not, and we begin to allow the tendrils of our thoughts to wrap around it and do whatever sort of metabolism that it's going to do. And for whatever reason, we see coffin and cake, and we think about a celebrity who has just died and they were so young, James Dean or something like that, right? That is alchemization. Where I then kind of got stuck, or where I think what the spurred this particular video was the next thing that could happen, which is almost an innovation, right? If you sort of max out the possibilities of a solo game, if you play it so often that you start to make your own house rules, if you play it so often that you feel like you keep running into the same scenarios over and over, and you wish that there was a little something different, not necessarily a different story, right? Because you could use usually the mechanics to drum up that story. But you start to think, wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be even better if I was able to have this option, if I was able to have this level of control? And while we can certainly do that by power of fiat, right? We can just say, well, I'm the game master of my solo game and I hereby declare it. We're not satisfied with that. We need to add some element of randomization. But why? Right? That's what I was scratching my head about. Why? Why do we want that? Because truly, as humans, we don't actually like that. We're programmed to not like randomization. You know, everyone says we are very pattern recognizing brains, and it's true. I mean, if you look at something like Husserl, philosopher would say we have, wrote about temporality, the way that we perceive things. And Husserl was really interested in how it was that we almost perceived something beyond the current moment. And he talked about this anticipation, where you're able, when I see the dice rolling out of my hands and onto the table, I'm not only seeing what was of this dice before shaking in my hand, I'm not only seeing the dice land on a 3, I'm also seeing a little bit into the future, right? And this is where this, in Husserl's mind, I'm explaining that quite poorly, it's a little more complex than that, but Husserl would say this sort of slight future perception is what creates anticipation, and this anticipation, when it is verified, gives us a very satisfying, pleasing feeling. I think the easiest way to think about this, and truly one of the probably place that Husserl's concepts around this are used most often now, is in rhythm or music, right? So there is, it is strange, and it's always struck me as strange that there are certain chords, like returning to a C is always a tonic. Now, again, I'm not a musician, but say I was able to do the Space Odyssey, right? So like doon, doon, do what's next in your head. You can do that, right? Doon, doon, doon. You hear it. You know what's next, and you know it. And what Husserl would say is, like, you sort of knew that before you even heard that song the first time. And similarly, if it didn't go that way, if it went doon, 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 doo doo, that's displeasing, that's discordant, that's upsetting, right? There's something satisfying about going to the next melodic place, because, as far as what Husserl would say, you know where it's going. You know where it's going. And so that anticipation, it is this slight blip of forward and backwards perception that we have at the same time. But that still doesn't answer why we would crave that, right? Because, if we look at our instincts on an evolutionary level, the thing that allows us and most organisms to survive is to create patterns and predict future outcomes, right? So if you hear a sound in the jungle, it's probably a tiger, and then you see a tiger, you're also going to try to figure out if there is more tigers, to see what sort of response that you're going to have. And in order to quickly approximate this, your body does a bunch of power redistribution algorithms or like subroutines and sends blood away from your gut and sends it towards your eyes and your brain. You have increased acuity. Your muscles get flushed with like very oxygenated blood so that you could react to things. And your vision narrows so that you could focus on one thing. And this is all used so that we can dispel whatever mystery or unknown that there is. And it's not pleasant. Or is it? The biggest douchebags in the world, I'm talking the ones who wear those like wraparound sunglasses, they're the ones that help you. They're like people you do tandem base jumping with, or like skydiving. What is the phrase they say all the time? Like, fear and excitement are the same emotion. It's actually quite true, right? Because when we get that mental acuity, that physical state of readiness, that flushing of adrenaline, that is actually quite pleasurable. And in fact, to put yourself into that state without a fear precursor feels good, right? If you were to just snap and suddenly you're in a state of ready, but without any threat, that's a good feeling. Your body is like humming at a high clip. And so perhaps the reason that we want to create this sort of false or distant or secondhand tension and anticipation and vexedness is so that we can get high off of those fight or flight drugs without actually being subject to the danger itself. Roller coasters, right? Why would anyone like roller coasters or horror movies? Well, because it allows us to enter into that state, which is not only physically pleasing, but mentally pleasing, right? Like as humans, we like putting it on the line. We like dancing on the edge of the sword. We like to not know if we're going to win or lose, but also at the same time kind of know that we're going to win because it's just a horror movie, right? And so there is something in which some people wish to have that feeling of not knowing. And in order to do that, we give over some of our fate in games to randomizing factors, whether that's the GM's brain, or it's dice, or it's playing cards, or it's looking up some oracle that some author wrote. The problem that we face as solo players is that if we are just going to be the one that makes up everything, it is not sufficiently randomized, because we already know something the minute we've thought of it. And so we cannot unknow it to then experience the thrill of not knowing. We cannot unknow it enough to feel anticipation. It's one of the reasons you cannot tickle yourself, because part of why we laugh in tickling is because it like sets our anticipation meters onto overdrive. Okay. And so we're looking to randomize enough such that there is enough complexity for us to say, I truly don't know what's going to happen. And we don't want it too complex, right? Because then it's like, I don't know what's going to happen and I'm not even sure I understand what the hell is happening. We don't want it that complex, right? So you don't want something that says, roll a D 4 million. And, if it's 3,625,822, then your character will take an inspiratory breath or something. We want it sufficiently randomized such that we give away our future knowledge and we allow in that space to be inhabited by anticipation, which is like a drug. Okay. And this is, when it comes down to it, this is the whole game of a solo RPG. But it's not just a game of solo RPG. It's also very similar to a different kind of game that I'm going to grab my little visual demonstration of now. All right. So the more that I thought about this, the more I realized that solo games are a lot like a game show. maybe that's not as deep as I thought it was going to be when it came out of my mouth. But specifically, I was thinking about one game show, and I won't say the name of it. I don't want there to be any copyright things, but let's just say the game show is called The Rice is Bright, or The Value is Correct. In a game show like that, you have these elements, right? The first is going to be the hook. The hook is the setting. It's the host's fun suit. It's the men and women who are in peak physical shape that show off the prizes, right? That's the hook. The music, the sound, the lights, everything is fun, 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 dazzling, hooks you in. In a solo game, this is going to be the cover. This is going to be the introduction. It's going to be the illustrations. It's going to be the binding, everything, right? When you have someone in as a hook and they decide that they're going to be a contestant. So just totally saying this phrase off the top of my head, not getting it from any sort of syndicated game shows, but say that you decide to play a game, you might say that that's a moment in which someone says, come on down. You know, you're the next contestant on the SoloRPG is great. And immediately you have to start making a wager, right? And a wager in solo gaming is usually the initial wager is your stats, especially if you get to toggle those stats in any way, especially if you get to toggle your starting gear, if you get to toggle your level of constitution and strength, if you get to choose skills, if you get to choose a class, whatever, you are wagering. You're basically saying, I don't have all the information right now, but based on what I can extract from like what I saw on the hook, this, and from, my outside experiences, this is what I'm going to wager. Okay. And if your wager is, regardless of what it is, you're basically going to enter into gameplay with that wager to play some mini games, right? And there is a theory, I can't remember who said it right now, but it's quite common theory that says that all RPGs are just a series of mini games, right? Combat is a mini game called Combat. It feels like it's part of the bigger game, but it's really like, now we're going to do this thing where you roll these dice and measure it against this. And then you can also make a choice around your modifiers based on what weapon or spells you use or whatever that. So that's like this mini game. And to keep people invested in this overarching solo game, you need to make sure that there's a little prize or the little prizes, right? And so this would be something like loot. There has to be the promise of something. There has to be the promise of more armor, more spells, maybe just more of the map, newer enemies, more of the story, right? More information. Because without the little prizes, the mini games can only be as fun as like the act of rolling dice is, right? Which, like, I don't know, when I was a kid and I played Yahtzee, I could probably have fun just like rolling the dice and looking at the results for at least 10 minutes. Hell, what was that game called? Sorry, right? It was Sorry, where you just press that bubble. Woo, I could burn some hours when I was 4 doing that. But eventually you want a prize, right? You want there to be some sort of upgrade, some sort of bonus, some new thing, okay? And the idea is that as you gather these prizes are going to help you to make easier future wagers, okay? And eventually you work up to this point in which you spin the wheel. And yes, I understand that's the worst wheel I've ever made. I chose to do it freehand and it sucked. But you're going to spin a big wheel. And you're going to try to, not everybody can beat the big wheel. In fact, the wheel's so big and so intimidating that you sort of understand that not everybody can win on this wheel, even if they give it a damn good try. And that's, a satisfying boss fight. That's some sort of final quest. That's some sort of riddle. That's some sort of part of the story, a labyrinth that is sufficiently difficult to the point that you're like, okay, if I'm able to do this, that'd be quite the accomplishment. And in fact, it's so fun to spin the wheel, and it's such a thrill to get to the wheel that even if you don't spin it, even if you don't win when you spin it, you're willing to go back because the hook was good enough, and now you know what the wheel's going to be, and so you're willing to go through that again, right? From a video gaming perspective, good game design means that like getting to the wheel, if bad game design, you get to the wheel, you lose and you go, well, screw that. I don't feel like wasting my time again. Because if the wheel is the only thing, if the outcome of that wheel is the only thing that you're looking forward to, then it's really not a game. It's just like delayed gratification. I've been playing Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. It's a pretty damn good game. And there's a lockpicking mechanic in it that I kind of like sometimes. The way that it does it is that based on your, I think it's trickery. I don't know why it's trickery skill, but it's based on your trickery skill. It modifies your lockpicking abilities. Other games, when you try to lockpick and you lose the roll, you just can't open the chest, right? But what Pathfinder does, and I'm not sure if it actually does this in actual Pathfinder, like the pen and paper book, but in the game, if you don't get it the first time, you can keep doing it. It's just that every time you do it, it's going to kind of screw up the stuff inside a little bit more. You're going to get less and less stuff. And then also you could just bust it open. But if you do that instead of like diamonds, you're going to get like gem shards or specks, right? And I kind of like that, except that sometimes I've just clicked the button 37 times until it finally opens. And what happens when that happens? I say, why didn't you just give me this stuff? Why did I have to click this button over and over and over again? Why couldn't I just have it, right? And I think this is the problem with a lot of, I don't know what even the genre of game would be called, but a sort of like Grand Theft Auto or whatever, this thing where you just want this ultimate power and then you get it and it's just sort of not very exciting. You're like, okay, well now I have this. Why? Because there's no randomization, or the randomization is so low that you've lost that anticipation. You've lost that productive tension that, when released, allows you to feel the endorphin rush of victory. And so this wheel, if you're able to spin it, you're able to go finally like the biggest, maybe it's not just one wheel, maybe it's many wheels, but there's some sort of showdown. And the showdown is interesting because unlike the wheel, the showdown could be difficult or the showdown could just be dramatic. And that, I really appreciate that choice sometimes in games. For instance, the end of Metroid, like, you're so powered up that you're just going to ace Mother Brain, I guess, in every Metroid other than the first one. And it's okay, though, because you're like, yeah, I mean, I've built this up so much. I'm so OP'd now that it almost makes sense for me to just come in and do the beatdown here. But whatever that is, you are then confronting some sort of big bad that represents often the inverse of you, okay? And so in a good solo game, I would say there, people, and I really don't see solo games that do this very well, actually. I think that there is a fear in solo games to put a win condition or an end condition. And those that do it, I feel like they undercut it so that they make the win condition such that the game can be played in like 20 minutes. And if it's not a roguelike, that's not very fun. So other games will say, oh, there's no win condition. You just keep exploring and exploring and exploring. And it's like, at a certain point, I have like my life to live. And I also want something new, unless I want to like sort of like make friends with this character forever, which is completely possible. But my thought is, why not create a win condition? And then if you reach that and you want to keep going, then you can summon another big win condition to start another campaign and do it in a way that allows your character to reset some of their wagers, right? To make that challenge difficult again. I think that, not to get too, this is going to be way too philosophically deep, but what the hell, I've done it already. I think a lot, I would say that cosmologically, I do believe in like eternal return. And I think that we will stop existing once that we have been everybody. And so, you always want to treat people good because that could be you who's begging for change one day. And I think that whatever, the Godhead is, whatever the supreme being is we all being aspects of that shatter ourselves and forget that we are OP, right? We forget that we're like a deity so that we can grind our XP and build things up and get to the wheel and spin the wheel and have that thrill and excitement of that showdown. And then, yeah, one day we remember like, oh yeah, we're all one. I'm a god and all this stuff. But then by that time you can just kind of do the shattering and forgetting again by restarting the game and playing again, because, and I won't tell you how much of that I believe literally and how much of that I just kind of use as a mantra to lead my life. But I will say that that's the point. The point is that tension and the unknown and the undecided and the unclear is scary, but we want to be scared. We want to be unsure, because being sure and being totally safe ultimately sucks, right? I mean, think about people, maniacs like Richard Branson, right? You have all this money and then you're like, oh, maybe I can get shot out of a cannon or something into space. Well, you know, why would such a psychosis exist? Because people who have leveled up or been leveled up enough realize that safety and pleasure and basically playing on all these cheat codes in God mode is not very entertaining. And so that's what we really want in a solo game, is we want the emulation, not only of this decision making or these outcomes or these different events. We want to emulate not having power. We want to emulate not being the GM. We want to forget that we are the god of this game. And so we transfer our power through these dice, through the cards, through this book, and back to the game and say, oh no, I've just got hit for 6 HP. But we would never choose to do that if we were the GM. If we were actually the GM of our own game, we would never choose to do that. So we have to run it through and randomize it so that when it spits out again, it appears as if it's just come out of nowhere. Okay. And I would say ultimately at the very end, there could be some sort of big prize, or you're the big punk. Winning or losing, I think either way is really fun, because depending on the ultimate outcome of a solo game, you're going to get some sort of catharsis or closure, is probably like one of the biggest prizes of them all, in which you can retroactively make meaning out of your experience and understand it. And this is really where the wheel of creation continues, right? I mean, this is how the good is put into the world when you commit yourself so much to the creation of something beautiful and exciting and interesting for itself. When you're done and you say, I want more, I want there to be more, you realize, if you're living a good life, you realize that the only way to make more is for me to make it for somebody else and me to gift that to somebody else. And that's when you want to start making games. You want to GM for other people. You want to bring kids into the hobby, stuff like that. Right. And so I do think there is a hero's journey involved in this. That's present in tabletop gaming in groups, but I think is really, really well profiled in solo play. And I have to say that I think the people that hate solo play, the people that drop into forums and are like, why would you do this? It's so stupid. I've seen YouTube videos of people just like angry about it. Like, solo play is stupid. You do this and that. And it's like, how could you possibly get so mad about something? Just like picking something and getting mad about it. Like, imagine me making a YouTube video that's just like, I hate the color yellow, coward's color, right? It's ridiculous. But why is it so activating? Because I think that it in some weird way that I can't fully trace, but I feel it. I think the people that get most mad about that are people that never play as GMs. They are the people that are part of RPG groups for 35 years. They complain about every GM that creates these universes, never pays them, never even probably thanks them, gets mad at them, talks about them behind their back, about how they think it's stupid how they decided this thing, or that they don't think about these things, or if they were a GM they would have done better. And they do nothing. They just leech these worlds off of people. I think solo play is the ultimate insult to that, right? It's like, hey, you know what? I like to play too, but I create it myself. And this says, no, I never want to have to do that. So I don't know, that last part's maybe a little bit of a stretch. I feel like I've tapped into something there, but I don't think I've explained it fully. So we can explore that later. All right. So with all that in mind, if we do have anything in mind here, and I did go off the path a little bit here, but I'm okay with that because I do want this to be a generative discussion. I didn't want to like teach anything. I wanted to actually learn something in front of you. So what I think, now that we've talked about that, we talk a little bit about some of the things that I think could be innovations in solo play. Now, right off the bat, I want to say that I think the most obvious thing that people are thinking is AI. And I just want to say, for me personally, I am not interested in that. Okay. I'm on team human. All right. And I know that right now AI is just a language model. It's not actually anything that has a consciousness. It has intelligence, but no consciousness. There's no doubt in my mind that there will eventually be the manufacturing of something that is so indistinguishable from consciousness that it will be irrelevant, the difference. I think perhaps that is part of the evolutionary process. I don't know. All I know is that like I'm with the humans, and I don't have any feeling about people that use AI. I don't have the strong, like, I don't condemn anybody for it or anything like that. I just don't want to be interested in contributing to something that will eventually like wish to eradicate me. That's just me. And if you think I'm overreacting about that, a lot of people were like, I don't want to go on Facebook. It's going to take my data and it's going to change my opinions. And people were like, oh, you're overreacting. And it's like, okay. So let's just like look at the last, 15 years of what happened with Facebook, and just, think about how much social media writ large has completely trampled over the individual human spirit. It's like, I'm, fool me once. I'm not into it. So I am, I was not looking to make a sweeping statement about AI, but here we are. What would be funny is if I was AI, like you found out later that this is just an AI bot. I'm just not interested. It just doesn't seem very fun to me. I would rather see like what I can get out of my mind. If you want to do that, that's cool. Seriously, it's cool. In my opinion, it's like when I'm using that kind of level of technology in that way, it's almost like, well, why don't I just play something on Xbox or something? So no judgies, no Hades. It's just not for me. That's not what I'm thinking. So I was trying to think outside of that. So here's a couple things I came up with. Number one, character or NPC storage. Like the rest of these, I don't exactly know what I mean by that. I just have like a vaporous idea of it. But my notion was that we can stop seeing solo play as an alternative activity to group play. And well, let me say this first. I think there could be some new methods or, let's see, mechanics for actually creating players, like player characters, and then like using them to a certain point in the story, and then putting them on ice, and then creating a new thread with a new player character, and then switching between many different player characters. I think it's important to say right now that I'm not suggesting that just because I can't articulate it, that like it's impossible and nobody's figured out how to do it yet. I don't actually think that's that hard. I just don't think I'm smart enough to figure that out. And also, I don't know if anyone has done it well yet. So feel free to take any of these ideas or anything you think about it. Um, but I am not saying like, whoa, this is such far out stuff. You never do it. This is just stuff I haven't seen yet and stuff that we might encounter. So that would be one thing, is like creating games where you are not just playing like a first person shooter of a solo game. I see a lot of solo games either as like an individual, a party, or some sort of like abstracted colony or something like that. And I would like in the future to see more options of like switching point of views during the story and making it such that people have less of um a gluey connection to their player character. In fact, I think there's some really weird stuff going on in tabletop writ large, in the amount that people are sort of uh, putting themselves in their characters. And I think it's good to identify with your characters, but to the level that some people want to blur the line between themselves and their character, I don't necessarily know if that's good for like human flourishing. And I also dislike the way that people sort of like code switch in and out of that when it's convenient for them. So like they'll get a painting done of them as the character that they buy for $1,600, and they'll get the name tattooed on them, and then they'll like play out their wildest little indulgent fantasies with this character. But as soon as somebody suggests that their character is taking some sort of position or represents something, they'll code switch out of that and be like, it's just a game, it's just a character, don't take it so seriously. So I think we'd actually see a leap forward if we unstuck ourselves a little bit from like seeing solo play as a mask with eye holes cut out that we can only see through one mask. Okay. The second thing that I could imagine is evolving paths or flowcharts or algorithms. In the Solo Investigator's Handbook, for example, there's some good, just that I saw while paging through, like some good flowcharts. I always love a good flowchart. I aspire to make good flowcharts, especially in terms of gameplay cycle or how to break down any very complex action or mechanic in a game. I think a flowchart is your best friend. I would like to see flowcharts take on more of an active role, not so much in like a choose your own adventure, but in a way that almost acts like computer programming, So like if this condition is met and this condition is met, then this thing happens, or this character moves into this power or ability, or this level opens up, something like that. I think there's actually something to be pulled here from, and of course now I'm looking for this. I can't find a single damn flowchart, but this is what I would like to borrow from game books a little bit. I think game books get a little bit tiring when it's just like turn to page 151, turn to page 93, turn to page. But I think there is a way to take the spirit of that, or the notion of that, and create with it some like contingency. There's another ambulance. Unbelievable. Hope everyone's okay. Clearly they're not. All right, so the flowchart disappeared. Anyways, you know what a flowchart looks like. Yeah, so I think there could be some ways to innovate in that allow a person to go along a path, like a mythic path, like that they can look forward to big transitions. Maybe the reason I can't find the flowchart is because it was actually in Mythic GME. Yep, totally. So yeah, this is one that's like a mechanic to how to ask a fate question, but I'm talking like a flowchart that represents things in game, right? So I'm not quite exactly sure what that looks like, but I think it's an area that would be really great. I'm going to pause again. The ambulance is too loud. What if I was like, oh, they're here for me. Bye, everyone. Okay, so number 3 would be creating transferable PCs or NPCs that you can plug in and out of group play. I know that this option exists. It gets proffered a lot by solo games. I don't think a lot of people do it, other than some of you who are sort of like highly creative or like hyper powered grognards who will use solo play to develop solo characters and then plug that character into your group play. But I would actually be curious to see an actual game that has definitive instructions that like between play sessions you have to complete solo quests with your character, and that is like not just allowable, but it's part of the game and might play in with the leveling up. And maybe when you get back in the group, you can report out what happened, and it could have implications on the storyline. Again, this is yet another one that I think is narrowing the gap between solo and group play, which I want to see more and more of, so that we can move beyond some of the and this is going to be over dramatic, but I'll say it, like some of the prejudices against solo play that are out there. Number 4, this would be something in which there is solo play that could be conducted via like centralized update. So, I know that there's correspondence, tabletop play where people write in discussion boards or through emails or something like that. And there is a game that I saw on Dave Thomavor's channel that I can't remember what it is, but it's got a pretty strong online community, and people use, what's posted there to update their game groups. But I'd love to see something in which, and it's not in real time, it's more like you have to follow a mailing list, or you have to go to some website, almost like a feed, that gives you updates about changes in the actual world that you're playing in that your characters then have to react to. So just as an example, like in Dragonbane, you could have something that in the Misty Vale, there's an earthquake and a certain part of it is taken out. Or there's an illness going around, and so your players that are of this kin have to roll to see if they got this illness, and then they could use their constitution as a modifier, etc. Okay. Number 5. This isn't one that I don't know if I want this or not. I just do think this is possibly a direction things can go. As I was talking about before, with like this narrowing of the gap between the player and the player character, how there's some sort of role confusion going on there. I think we're going to start seeing some things that gamify players' lives a little bit. Mr. 55 and I were talking about on the last pod, this, not the last one, the one before, about this guy in early internet. And I think he was part of an amazing documentary called We Live in Public. I highly recommend you watch it. It was a prophetic documentary by Andy Timonar. I think it came out in 2010 or 11. It's been like one of my favorite documentaries of all time, We Live in Public. But I think he was featured in that this guy like gamified his life in the early internet when the internet was still fun. And he just let people buy stocks in his life, and he would make whatever decisions that the stock market of his life dictated. There were like constraints. You couldn't make him do something illegal or harm himself or whatever. But these people followed him and invested in him, and it like ended up that he got engaged and married based on like the decisions that they gave him. And so I could see there being something, I think there's probably been attempts with like mental health. And look, I'm a very strong supporter of mental wellness. I want people to feel good about themselves, and I want people to grow, and I want people to do all the things that they were meant to do. I am unconvinced that like so far there has been any kind of self-help RPG stuff that has actually helped somebody get through something difficult. I mean, I think that a lot of people have played solo and tabletop, and it's like helped them build their confidence or know themselves better. But I'm talking about these games that are specifically called like wellness quest. And it's like, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths every morning. I just don't feel like it's enough to mean anything. Like, I can't picture anyone being like, well, I played this game and I took 3 deep breaths and now I finally love myself. I think there's probably some people who would say that that's been very helpful, but in terms of things that actually change people, outside of grief and trauma, the actual ability to, through discipline and application of rigorous self change, the amount of time and pressure that it takes to actually change oneself is so significant that I am unconvinced that somebody could like do it from a 9-page zine. So that said, though, I think that we are going to see more of this. And I bet there's going to be a little bit of controversy in this too if people start to gamify like health or, like weight or blood pressure, stuff like that. But I could see it. I mean, me personally, the mischievous part of me, I think would be kind of funny, so that if you use your real life experiences to inform your character creation, or be like, if you were scared, like if you didn't ask for a raise today, then you get -2 on every roll or something like that. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, but I do definitely think there's going to be some further elision of the two. You know what? I talked about switching points of view, just with developing other characters. I also, this isn't totally separate from that one, but I would also say that maybe we need to start thinking about game systems that allow you to play in other characters in a scene, right? Because the way that it's usually set up is that you have your player character and you are in the driver's seat of your player character. And then you have these other things like NPCs and animals and all these other things that are sort of just fully subject to dice or oracles. And I see no reason why mechanics can't be built in for you to sort of like take the reins of those characters and make some decisions with them, still using dice rolls and stuff. But is there a way that I can like confront a cursed grizzly bear, and then to switch the camera view out of that grizzly bear's eyes and play as that grizzly bear, and then switch back to my player character? And I think the thing that's stopping us from that is sort of the lingering basic expert min-maxing notion of like, well, I don't want to play an enemy because I want to try and defeat the enemy. So if I was playing the enemy, I would be dishonest because I would just make a bad decision with it. But if you look at it as using these randomizing things, these stats, the story, everything to make a better story, then I think you could have enough integrity to switch around your point of view so that you can craft something really, really magical that you have more control with. Because I do feel that NPCs and stuff can feel very, I mean, this is Captain Obvious statement. I feel that NPCs can be very one-dimensional. Yeah, I always think like one thing that takes me out of gameplay a little bit, even when I'm playing a super immersive game, playing Baldur's Gate 3, right? That's an extremely immersive game that I don't really like, but I'll get back to that. But some other time. You have this game with glorious graphics, beautiful gameplay, pretty darn good dialogue most of the time. And then you walk by someone in the town and they're like, supposed to be windy later. And then you walk by them again, supposed to be windy later. It takes me out of it, man. Like my immersion goes down. And so my question is like, why can't I play that out even for a second? I don't need to take that character and then, do it on like a milk bottle fetching quest for my morning cereal or something. But I think there's a way to do that with integrity. The last thing, I really have no idea what this fully means, but I can like feel it in my soul. So I guess I'll just talk it out as much as I can. I think that, and I mentioned this a couple, I think last week, I asked people if anybody has a hard time choosing like evil options in tabletop role playing or a video game. Because I do. Like I actually feel bad. Which I think is a good thing, like, right? That means like there's some immersion going on, and I'm actually considering the fate of the people in the town. And if I'm playing a really good CRPG or something, I really can get to a place where I agonize about decisions because I have to do the thing that I know my character would do or whatever, what's for best, but it's hard. And because I want to feel that way, I want to be engaged that way. And so something I think about is that an interesting axis that can add some new experiences in solo play would be adding mechanics for morality. And I'm not talking about like lawful good, neutral, something like that. I'm saying like forcing a character to make decisions that you as a human would not make and don't want to make. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. It's almost like as AI becomes more of a thing, and we're going to start asking ourselves more and more, like, what is the difference between me and a machine? If both me and the machine can write you a birthday card and you can't tell the difference between it, how do you know what is the man and what is the machine? And you know what? The only thing I can come up with is that I wanted to write you a birthday card. So even though the outcome is the same, I wanted to do it. The machine, it can't want to do anything. And so there's something there. That means there's something there in me that compels me on a very deep level. And you know, I joke around a lot on this channel, and I think some people would laugh at me if hey Maurice, even when I call solo play like an art form and stuff like that. But I don't know. I look at all human experiences as something that allows us to get to know ourselves more and to participate in some of the most functional, some of the most important functions of being human. And so I do take it seriously. I think it's important, and I think it's beautiful, and I think we can grow from it. And so I don't see why we can't push this form a little bit more. And like, screw it if people think that it's a joke. Like, why can't it be moving and powerful and gripping and feel disgusting and perverse and weird and challenging and narcissistic and sacrificial and glorious and altruistic and, you know, godly? Why can't we feel all those things? I just want the future of solo play to go like all the way. I want it to go as far as it can. And I think a lot of people would hear that, and to that it would mean like, oh, I have to like make really good mechanics, or I have to make really good story. And I'm like, no, I just think we have to like increase the moral seriousness of it. Take it really, really seriously as something that is, you know, is our thing. This is a really special thing. I'm so glad that I have it. And I think it can be pushed. I think that there can be more. I'm happy with where things are, but I think we can even push it further. So with that, Maurice and I are going to eat some Oreos, and you have a wonderful night. And thank you again, Patrick R. Maurice, you got to stop coming when I'm filming. It is weird. It's like I don't see you all day. How do you even know I'm filming? That's what I don't get. Like, there's no light that comes on or anything. You're fine with me.